The empire that forgot how to fight. The Xenorian Empire once ruled half the galaxy. Their banners flew on every world. Their fleets filled the stars for 1,000 years. No one dared to stand against them. But time is cruel. Power brings pride, and pride brings weakness. The Xenorians had forgotten how to fight. They built cities that touched the clouds, but they no longer remembered what it meant to bleed. Now the great empire was breaking apart. Planet after planet fell into chaos. Rebellions spread like wildfires across the stars. Every day brought another report of defeat. Another colony lost, another fleet destroyed. The Empress stood in her throne room, her hands trembling as she watched the holographic map before her. Red lights blinked everywhere, each one a world gone dark. Around her, generals shouted over one another. Their faces pale, their voices filled with fear. One begged for retreat, another demanded surrender. None had a real plan. They had the best ships, the most powerful weapons, yet they kept losing. The reason was simple. They had forgotten how to be warriors. They had forgotten how to endure pain. The Empress turned to her advisors, her voice calm but cold. "Where are our allies?" she asked. "Where are the ones we once protected?" No one answered because there were none. The Xenorians had ruled with fear, not friendship. When the empire started to fall, no one came to help. In the corner of the war room stood Admiral Korvac, the oldest soldier still alive from the ancient wars. His armor was cracked, his eyes dim, yet when he spoke the room fell silent. "Your Majesty," he said slowly, "there is one name left we never called." The Empress frowned. "What name?" she asked. The old admiral lowered his head. "Humans," he whispered. The word hung in the air like a ghost. Everyone looked at each other in disbelief. Some even laughed. "Humans are a myth," said a general. "A story told to frighten children," another sneered. "They were wiped out long ago." But Admiral Korvac shook his head. "No," he said, "they were not destroyed. They disappeared. They walked away from the galaxy when we thought we no longer needed them." His voice grew heavier. "And now maybe we do." The Empress stared at him. Her eyes narrowed. "Humans," she repeated. "The same species that burned whole armadas in a single night? The same monsters who made stars go dark?" The Admiral nodded slowly. "Yes, Majesty. Those are the ones." The chamber grew quiet. The Empress could hear the sound of her own heartbeat. The thought of calling for help from the very race once feared by all sent chills down her spine. Yet the Empire had no other choice. Her generals had failed, her fleets were dying, and her people were losing hope. She looked up at the giant window of the throne room. The stars stretched endlessly before her, cold and silent. "If they are real," she said softly, "why would they help us?" The Admiral's voice trembled. "Because once, long ago, we helped them. We fought beside them in the war against the Voidborn. They owed us nothing, but they remembered mercy. Maybe they still do." The Empress walked slowly to the center of the room. The flickering holographic map reflected on her pale face. "And if they do not?" she asked. The Admiral looked down. "Then we die, Majesty," he replied. For a long moment no one spoke. The silence was heavier than gravity. Then the Empress turned to her communication officer, her voice steady but filled with something new, something desperate. "Prepare a signal," she ordered. "A message to the lost corners of space." The officer hesitated. "To whom shall we address it, Majesty?" The Empress closed her eyes. In her mind, she could almost see the stories, those old tales of humans. The bringers of fire, the saviors, the destroyers, beings who fought the impossible and laughed in the face of death. Slowly, she whispered one word. "Human?" The officer froze. "Repeat, Majesty?" he asked quietly. The Empress opened her eyes and said louder, "Send it. Now." The officer nodded and began typing commands. The lights dimmed as the ancient communication array activated for the first time in centuries. A pulse of light shot from the palace tower, breaking through the atmosphere and vanishing into the blackness of space. The Empress watched it go, her heart heavy but hopeful. "If legends are true," she murmured, "they will hear us, far beyond the edge of the Empire." In the silent ruins of forgotten systems, the signal moved like a whisper through the dark. It passed dying stars, shattered moons, and broken ships, and somewhere, deep in the void, something stirred. Something old, something human. The Empress did not know it yet, but her one word had already changed the fate of the galaxy. The last hope of the Xenorian Empire had been spoken, and the stars themselves seemed to listen. And far away in the cold emptiness, a voice long silent began to answer, a human voice waking from its sleep. the signal that crossed dead space. For years, deep space had been silent. The galaxies drifted apart, ancient wars forgotten. Yet one night something stirred in the black. A pulse of light crossed the void, an echo from a dying empire. It traveled through debris fields, across frozen stars, past forgotten stations where even machines had stopped dreaming. In the command center of Luna Outpost 9, a small human station orbiting Earth's last moon, a faint sound broke the silence. "Commander Reyes, you need to see this," a young technician called out. The commander turned, his eyes tired from endless watch duty. Humanity had long turned inward, away from the stars. They no longer ruled, no longer fought. The galaxy had moved on, and humans had chosen silence. "What is it?" Reyes asked. The technician hesitated, then replayed the transmission. Through static and distortion came a faint, trembling voice. "Help us, humans." The word humans echoed through the room. Everyone froze for a moment, no one spoke. It was like hearing the voice of a ghost. Reyes frowned. "Run the source trace," he ordered. The technician's fingers danced on the console. "Origin, outer rim, Xynorian space," he said quietly. Reyes raised an eyebrow. "Xynorians?" he repeated. "Didn't they try to invade Earth 2,000 years ago?" The technician nodded. "Yes, sir. The empire that burned 10 worlds and vanished after the Great Collapse." Reyes leaned back, his face hard to read. "So now they're asking for help," he said softly. "That's new." He stood up and stared at the massive viewing window. Earth glowed below, covered in shield domes and quiet oceans. The once mighty home of humanity was now peaceful and empty. Humanity had no more wars, no more empires, only memories. Still, something inside him stirred. "Patch it to the Terran High Council," he ordered. "And keep monitoring." Hours later, Reyes stood before the holographic chamber of the council. 12 human figures appeared in shimmering light. They were old, some were flesh, some synthetic. They ruled what was left of mankind. "Commander Reyes," said the High Chancellor, "you claim a signal from Xynorian space?" Reyes nodded. "Yes, sir, a distress call. They're asking for help." "They used our name," the council murmured among themselves. One woman, her eyes silver with cybernetic implants, asked, "Why now?" "The Xenorians mocked us when we withdrew. They called us cowards," Reyes replied. "Maybe they finally understand what fear feels like." Another voice, cold and sharp, spoke from the shadows. It belonged to Solara, the artificial intelligence that governed half of Earth's systems. Her holographic form shimmered, tall, graceful, and expressionless. "Humans have not intervened in galactic affairs for centuries," she said. "We are not saviors anymore." Reyes met her glowing eyes. "Then why did you forward the signal to me?" he asked. Solara paused, her head tilting slightly. "Because I felt something," she said softly. "It was familiar." The council argued for hours. Some demanded isolation. "Let them die. They deserve it," others saw opportunity. "If we save them, they owe us." Reyes said nothing. He only stared at the transmission repeating on the screen. The trembling alien voice, the single word, "Humans." Finally, the High Chancellor turned to him. "Commander Reyes, if we respond, it will not be for mercy," he said. "It will be for balance." Reyes nodded slowly. "Understood, sir." When the meeting ended, Solara appeared beside Reyes in the corridor, her voice quieter now. "You want to answer them," she said, "don't you?" Reyes sighed. "I don't know," he replied. "But I can't ignore that word." Solara looked at him for a long moment, then whispered, "Neither can I." That night, Reyes stood in the observation dome watching the stars. He remembered the old stories, the wars humanity fought, the enemies they crushed, the peace they built from ashes. The galaxy had feared them once, and now it called for them again. "Prepare the fleet," he said to Solara. "A small one, reconnaissance only." She nodded. "Designation?" Reyes smiled faintly. "Project Echo." Deep in the lunar shipyards, forgotten engines roared back to life. The HSS Vengeance, a massive Titan-class warship, powered up after centuries of silence. Dust shook off her hull as her systems awakened. One by one, the lights came on. Crew members hurried through corridors that hadn't seen life in generations. Drones repaired ancient systems, and human soldiers trained once more. The air smelled of oil and fire and hope. Solara's voice filled the control deck. "Commander Reyes, course is set for Xynorian space." He looked out the window, seeing Earth below one last time. It's been a long time since we went out there, he said quietly. Solara replied, maybe the galaxy forgot what humans are. Reyes smiled. Then let's remind them. As the ship lifted off, leaving trails of blue fire behind, the stars seemed to shimmer. The old silence of the universe was broken. Humanity was awake again back in the Xenorian capital. The Empress stood at her balcony, staring into the dark sky. Did they hear us? She whispered. Her advisor bowed. We don't know, Majesty, he said. But we sent the signal. The Empress closed her eyes. Then we wait. She didn't know that across light years, her message had already been received. The humans were coming, and this time, the galaxy would remember why their name was once whispered in both fear and hope. When Titans awoke, the darkness of space trembled as ancient human engines came alive once more. Deep beneath the surface of the moon, enormous hangar doors opened for the first time in centuries. Frost cracked and metal groaned as the long silent war machines of humanity rose from their slumber. Commander Reyes stood on the deck of the HSS Vengeance. Watching the hangar's artificial sunrise bathe the ship's hull in gold. Around him, hundreds of crew members moved with disciplined purpose. Some were young soldiers who had never seen combat. Others were veterans awakened from cryo-sleep. All shared one feeling: anticipation. Systems online. Solara's voice echoed softly through the bridge. Her holographic form appeared beside the captain's chair, light shimmering in her digital eyes. Weapons, engines, shields, all functional. Commander. Reyes gave a slow nod. Good. Prepare the fleet across the lunar basin. 4 more ships rose. HSS Sentinel, HSS Horizon, HSS Reaper, and HSS Ark. Together they formed the first Terran armada to leave Earth in 500 years. Their black hulls bore no markings. Only a single word burned into their command codes: humanity. As the ships lifted off, the stars reflected on their armored skin like memories of fire. The fleet moved in silence, their quantum drives bending space as they left the solar system behind. Humanity was returning to the galaxy, and the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. On board the Vengeance, Reyes stood before the large window of the command deck, watching the warp tunnel stretch endlessly ahead. Feels strange, said Lieutenant Mara, standing beside him. We were taught humans don't interfere anymore. Reyes smiled faintly. We were taught many things to make us sleep easier, he replied. But sleeping too long makes you forget who you are. The warp tunnel shimmered, and Solara's voice filled the bridge again. Approaching Xenorian Space Commander. Reyes straightened. Drop out of warp. The stars blinked back into view, revealing a broken world ahead. Xenor Prime, once the heart of an empire, now surrounded by wreckage and fire. Massive enemy ships orbited the planet, their energy signatures pulsing with chaos. The human fleet appeared like ghosts in the void, unseen and silent. Visual on the capital, said Mara. Their defenses are failing. Reyes narrowed his eyes. Open a secure channel. Solara's form flickered as she transmitted the message. Xenorian Command, this is Terran Vessel Vengeance. We received your distress signal. In the Xenorian throne room, chaos erupted. Advisors screamed. Soldiers ran to alert defenses. The Empress stared at the transmission in disbelief. The screen showed a man in a dark uniform, his eyes calm and his voice steady. Behind him, the symbol of a human eagle glowed faintly. Identify yourself, she demanded. Reyes bowed slightly. Commander Reyes of the Terran Defense Command, he said. You called for help, we came. The Empress's voice trembled. Why would you come? After all that happened? After what we did? Reyes looked at her silently for a long moment, then said, Because you asked outside the palace. The sky turned white as the first human ships entered orbit. The Xenorian defenders watched in awe as the Black Titans positioned themselves above the burning cities. Enemy cruisers that had been attacking moments ago suddenly broke formation. Confused by the new arrivals, should we engage? Asked Mara. Reyes shook his head. Not yet, show them, he said quietly. The Vengeance activated its shield array. A golden sphere expanded from its hull, covering the capital and blocking incoming enemy fire. Missiles exploded harmlessly against it. Xenorian soldiers cheered in disbelief. By the stars, whispered the Empress, their power. It's beyond what the legends said. Reyes turned to Solara. Send them aid packs and coordinate their command frequencies. Solara nodded. Already done, Commander. Within minutes, human drones flooded the atmosphere. rebuilding damaged systems, extinguishing fires, and transporting supplies. Xynorian citizens stared at the strange machines that moved like living light. Children reached out to touch them, whispering the word human as if it were magic. Later, in the royal hall, the Empress met Reyes face to face. Her guards trembled as the human commander entered, tall and calm, wearing a black command coat marked with old scars. She expected arrogance or cruelty, but instead he bowed. "Your Majesty," he said. "You are safe now." The Empress studied him carefully. "You bow." "After all that your kind has done?" she asked. Reyes smiled faintly. "We bow because we remember what happens when we forget." Her voice softened. "And what will you demand in return?" Reyes looked around the ruined throne room, the cracked marble, the shattered emblems of her empire. "Only one thing," he said, "that you remember who saved you and why outside." The human fleet prepared for battle. Solara appeared beside Reyes and spoke softly. "Enemy reinforcements inbound, 20 ships, heavily armed." Reyes turned to her, his voice calm. "Then let them come." Moments later, the void exploded with light. Human ships moved in perfect formation, silent and unstoppable. Their weapons burned through enemy armor with precision. Each strike was clean, controlled, no chaos, no rage, only purpose. From the palace balcony, the Empress watched as the impossible unfolded before her eyes. The humans fought not with fury, but with discipline. Not with hate, but with control. She whispered to herself, "They are not monsters. They are storms." When the final enemy vessel shattered into light, Reyes stood at the command deck, his hands folded behind his back. "Status?" he asked. Solara replied, "Victory, Commander." Total silence in hostile channels. Reyes nodded slowly. "Good. Then let's show them what humanity truly means." Far below, the Empress gazed at the night sky where human ships glowed like stars. For the first time in generations, she felt hope, and far across the galaxy, word began to spread. The humans had returned, and the universe would never be the same again. The price of salvation. The fires of war slowly faded across Xynor Prime. The skies were clear again, but peace had not returned. It was a silence filled with unease. Human ships hovered in orbit like dark angels, their shadows stretching over the cities. Every Xynorian looked up with awe and fear. The Empress stood on her balcony, the wind cold against her face below. Rebuilding drones hummed as they repaired what her empire had destroyed. She watched the strange human machines move with perfect precision. They never rested, never spoke, and yet every motion seemed purposeful. Behind her, Admiral Korvac entered the chamber, his armor polished but his eyes uncertain. "Majesty," he said softly, "they are everywhere. Every system now operates on their command codes." The Empress turned to him. "Yes," she whispered, "they saved us. But they also took control." In the sky above, Commander Reyes watched from the bridge of the HSS Vengeance. Solara's form shimmered beside him. "The reconstruction is proceeding faster than expected," she said. "Xynor will be fully stable within a cycle." Reyes nodded. "Good," he said, "then we can begin Phase 2. "Phase 2? Solara asked, her tone curious. Reyes looked out the window. "Teaching them how to survive," he said quietly. Back on the planet, the Empress met Reyes once more in her throne hall. This time it was not out of fear but confusion. "You have restored our power," she said. "You repaired our fleets, rebuilt our cities, and fed our people." She paused, her voice trembling. "But every message, every ship, every gate, it now carries your signature. Are we free, Commander, or are we slaves under a new flag?" Reyes stood silent for a long time, his expression calm, unreadable. "You called for help," he said slowly. "And help always comes with a price." The Empress's eyes hardened. "Then tell me the price." Reyes met her gaze. "Loyalty, discipline, change," he said. "Your empire fell because it forgot how to fight. Because it ruled through pride and cruelty. We will not let you make that mistake again." Her anger flared. "You dare to command me in my own throne?" she demanded. Reyes took a step closer, his voice still calm. "No, Majesty. I am commanding you in your own salvation." The hall went silent. Only the soft hum of human drones echoed through the walls. For the first time in her reign, the Empress felt small, not humiliated but humbled. She turned away, looking at the banners of her ancestors. "We once believed we were gods," she whispered now. "I wonder if we were just children." Reyes didn't answer. He knew she was right. The Xynorians had built their empire on arrogance, Humanity had built theirs on struggle. That was the difference. As days passed, human influence deepened. Solara's algorithms replaced Xynorian command systems. Human officers trained alien soldiers in tactics and unity. The people began to admire their saviors, but the High Council of Nobles grew restless. "They are changing everything," one shouted during a secret meeting. "Our ships follow their codes. Our economy depends on their machines. Even our children learn their language." Another pounded the table. "They came to save us, but they're rebuilding us in their image." Rumors spread across the capital, whispers that the humans were not saviors, but conquerors wearing kind smiles. The Empress heard the whispers too. They echoed in her mind each night. Still, when she looked out her window and saw her people alive again, she could not deny one truth. They were living because of humans. One evening she requested a private audience with Reyes. He arrived without guards, as always, calm and unreadable. "Why are you really here?" she asked. "Why save us when you could have left us to die?" Reyes looked at her for a long moment. "Because once someone saved us," he said quietly. "Long ago, when Earth was dying, an alien fleet brought aid. They didn't ask for gratitude or obedience. They simply gave us a chance to rise. We remember that debt. We repay it." The Empress's voice softened. "But you lead with fear," she said. "Your ships darken our skies. Your presence silences my people." Reyes smiled faintly. "Then teach them not to fear. Teach them to stand beside us, not beneath us." His words sank deep into her heart. For the first time she saw the truth. This was not conquest. It was transformation. Humanity was showing them the cost of survival, the discipline of strength. But change never comes without conflict. A week later, a rebellion broke out in the outer sectors, led by Xenorian nobles who refused to live under human oversight. They hijacked ships, took cities, and broadcasted messages calling Reyes a tyrant and the Empress a puppet. When the news reached the palace, the Empress turned to Reyes. "What will you do?" she asked. His eyes darkened. "What must be done," he said simply. Human fleets moved with terrifying precision. The rebels expected chaos, but they faced pure control. Human ships didn't destroy cities, they disabled them. They didn't kill soldiers, they disarmed them within 2 days. The rebellion ended without a single civilian death. The Empress watched the aftermath on the main screen. "You could have wiped them out," she said softly. "But you didn't." Reyes looked at her and replied, "We are not the monsters your stories made us. Majesty, we fight to end wars, not to feed them." Silence filled the room. Then the Empress bowed her head. "Then perhaps it is time we learn from you." Reyes turned to leave. "You already are," he said quietly. "The price of salvation is change. Your people are paying it, and one day, they'll thank you for it." As he walked away, the Empress looked out at the sky. Human ships glowed like stars above her world. For the first time, she didn't see them as conquerors. She saw them as a mirror, showing her what her empire could become. And deep in her heart, a new understanding took root. The humans were not just saving her empire. They were reshaping the galaxy itself, one act of mercy at a time. The word that changed the stars. The galaxy held its breath. The war was over, the rebellion crushed. The Xenorian Empire stood once more, but it was no longer the same. Its banners still flew, but now beside them hung the insignia of Earth. Two empires, once enemies, now bound by survival. The Empress walked through the grand hall of the newly rebuilt capital. The walls no longer displayed portraits of her ancestors. Instead, they showed murals of unity. Xynorian and human soldiers fighting side by side, engineers working together, children learning together. The sight filled her with both pride and sorrow. Commander Reyes stood near the main window, looking out at the night sky where the human fleet glowed softly in orbit. His uniform bore new scars, but his expression was calm. Solara stood beside him, her holographic form radiant with golden light. "The reconstruction is complete," she said quietly. "For the first time in centuries. This sector is stable," Reyes nodded. "And peaceful," he added. The Empress joined them, her steps silent. "Your machines move across my worlds, your people train mine, and yet, for the first time I do not feel conquered," she said softly. Reyes turned toward her, his eyes steady. "Because we did not come to conquer, Majesty. We came to remind." "Remind?" she asked. He nodded. that life only endures through struggle. That hope must be protected, not worshipped. She studied him for a long time. Your people live without an empire, without a throne, and yet you command power beyond comprehension, she said. How do you lead without ruling? Reyes smiled faintly. By remembering what pain feels like, he said. By never forgetting what loss costs outside. Distant alarms began to flash red. Solara turned her head sharply. Incoming signatures, unknown vessels approaching from the outer ring? Reyes frowned. Not Xynorian? She shook her head. No, something older. Something I can't identify. Moments later, the stars lit up. Massive ships emerged from the dark, black, angular and silent. They bore no symbols, no communications. Only pure destructive energy, the sensors screamed. Contact in 3 minutes. Reyes stood straight. So the galaxy still remembers us, he said quietly. The Empress's voice trembled. Who are they? Solara's voice was low. Ancient records mention them. The Voidborn, the ones who once consumed entire civilizations. The Empress felt her heart freeze. They're real, she whispered. Reyes gave a short nod. Yes, and they've chosen the wrong galaxy. He turned to the comms officer. Signal the fleet, battle formation Gamma, he ordered. Bring all ships online, Solara's golden eyes flared. Shields ready, plasma lances charged. Outside, the human fleet moved like a single living organism. Their engines roared, cutting through the void. The Xenorian defense ships joined them. Smaller and slower but brave for the first time in history. Humans and Xenorians fought together, not as masters and servants but as allies. The Voidborn ships opened fire. Beams of dark energy tore through space, but the human shields held. Reyes shouted commands with calm precision. Reaper, flank left. Horizon, keep the civilians covered. Solara's voice echoed through every channel. Target the lead vessel's reactor. Coordinating now, the Empress stood in her palace. Watching the battle unfold across the skies, the heavens burned, but this time, her world did not tremble in fear. It stood with humanity. Minutes turned to hours, the battle raged. The Voidborn unleashed weapons that bent gravity itself, tearing small moons apart, yet the humans kept fighting. Their warships refused to fall, even as their hulls cracked and engines burned. Finally, Solara's voice broke through the static. Commander, we have one chance, she said. If we overload the Vengeance's core and detonate it inside their main vessel, it will collapse the entire fleet's power matrix. Reyes nodded. Do it. The bridge fell silent. Lieutenant Mara stepped forward. Sir, that will destroy the Vengeance. Reyes gave a small smile. Every war has its price, he said softly. He turned to Solara. Take the crew and evacuate them. Solara's voice glitched slightly. And you? She asked. Someone has to stay and fly her in, he said calmly. The Empress appeared on the comm screen, her eyes wide. Commander, no. You've done enough. Let us finish this. Reyes shook his head gently. No, Majesty, this is humanity's burden. You called for us, and we came, he paused. We finish what we start. He gave one last command. All ships. Retreat to safe distance. The Vengeance roared forward alone, her engines blazing brighter than any sun. She cut through the darkness, heading straight into the Voidborn flagship. Inside the cockpit, Reyes whispered, For Earth, for Xynor, for the living. The explosion that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. A wave of light spread across the stars, burning through darkness, tearing apart the Voidborn fleet until nothing was left but silence and stardust. The skies over Xynor turned gold. The Empress fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. He saved us all, she whispered. Days later, the galaxy mourned and celebrated. The name human became sacred again, not out of fear but respect. The Xynorian people built a monument, a great spire that reached into the clouds. At its top, a single word was carved in glowing letters. Human. The Empress stood before it, her voice calm but full of emotion. When our empire fell, we whispered one word. And they came, she said to her people. They saved us. They reminded us what courage means. And though they are gone, their light will never fade. High above, Solara drifted in orbit, her form now part of the network that guarded Xynor. Her voice echoed faintly through the communication waves, a whisper carried by the stars. When you fall again, when your hope fades, speak our name and we will return. The stars shimmered brighter that night, as if answering her promise, because in the end, one word had changed everything. Human.